What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? It's your boy Goblin, and today I'm coming in with what you've all been waiting for. The beginning of what is probably going to be one of the best, if not the best, series on my channel. We've got the Rehab series, and let me tell you, it's a hoot and a holler. So, before I dive into that, I would like to mention a couple things. First off, drop a like on this video if you guys do enjoy. Second off, I got a PS4 again. For those of you guys who don't have me on Snapchat, you may not have seen yet. I will put my PSN name in the description below. Please do add me, everyone. Hit me up. Let's play some PS4. I got IW and the Modern Warfare Remastered and 2K17. Catch me on the court. That's all I'm going to say. But anyways, hope you guys enjoy this video. And also, another thing I'm going to say is, in this video, I'm going to kind of tell the story of what got me into rehab. You know what? Because there was a specific event. It wasn't just like my parents decided, all right, get him in there. You know, it was a specific event. So either way, hope you guys enjoyed. Drop a like if you did. And without further ado, let's dive into it. So this happened a long time ago. I still remember the date. It was October 28th, and on this faithful day, it was a couple days after I gotten put on probation, I decided I was kind of going to have a last hurrah, before I completely went sober on probation. I decided I'm just going to go ham. I deeply, wholeheartedly regret it at this point. But, at the same time, if I didn't do it, I would probably still be getting fucked up right now and probably would have violated probation and probably would have ended up getting locked up. So thank God for that. But anyways, basically on this day, I was hanging out with my buddy Chad. My buddy Chad lives, about an hour away from me. He came and picked me up, and he had the good drugs. He had some acid, and I bought like 20-something tabs off him. And I was planning on selling some of them. I sold a couple of them that night. I think I ended up selling not that many, maybe like 5 tabs that night. I wanted to save the rest for a rainy day. And I ended up dropping 2 of them just in the car. We were riding around serving people, and I dropped 2 of them. I dropped one immediately as soon as I got them, and then I dropped another one about an hour later because I was feeling the come up, but I was like, oh, this isn't intense enough. I need more. So that second tab, I feel like, is really what triggered what happened to me. And I'll explain that. That second tab put me on a rocket ship, and the rocket ship went past the moon, went past Mars, went past Pluto. It went to a planet none of us have discovered yet. It was nuts. So we're riding around, serving people, and I call up my buddy Chris, and I'm like, hey, Chris, I'm with Chad. Can we come over? I'm trying to chill. I'm tripping balls. Chris is like, of course, dude. Come on over. So me and Chad, we're whipping it over to Chris's house. Chad's driving. I'm sitting in shotgun, smoking a square. Not smoking a square, but I'd previously smoked a square, because he didn't let me smoke in his car. But, I smoked outside of the car. So, I was feeling good, had a little buzz going. And I originally didn't intend to smoke weed this night because I was already on probation. So I was like, I'm done smoking weed. But, when you're intoxicated, weed is just the best thing with any drug ever. So I end up getting to Chris's house. Chris has got the good weed. He's the Connect. He's got the best gas. So of course I'm like, let me get some. I can't resist. So I didn't buy a ton. I only bought an eighth. I was like, all right, last hurrah. Don't need to re-up. Just need enough for tonight. So bought myself an eighth. My boy Chad had a decent amount. I don't remember how much he had. I think he actually re-upped. He might have gotten like maybe a half hour a zip. I don't remember exactly. And he matched me. So we rolled up some pretty fat blunts, and we were just smoking, and we were chilling for a little bit. And this was about 30 minutes after the second tab hit when I took the second tab. I mean, I was chilling at Chris's for a little bit, and finally, we're there for maybe 45 minutes. I'm smoking, and the second tab hits me. And I don't know what it was about this second tab, but it sent me to a very interesting place in my mind. It was a trip like no other I've ever had, and I don't know why that was. I'm not trying to hate on my homie, but like, he got it off the deep web. I don't even know if it was real acid, but I'm confident it was. I trust him, but I don't know. Maybe that's the only rational explanation I could think of. Maybe it was 25i. That's the conclusion I've drawn, but I'm not certain on it. Nor do I hold any resentments towards him, because he didn't know either. He was taking it himself. So I mean, that's what I think it might have been, but I'm not going to draw that conclusion. So either way, I dropped those 2 tabs, and I was sitting there, and all of a sudden it just hit me. My heart was racing. I was sweating. I couldn't get my thoughts together. There was kind of like this black edge around my vision, almost like I was about to pass out. Everything just a very thin, it's hard to describe what I was seeing, a very thin black edge. But also, I was having of course, the effects of acid. The colors were enhanced, but this was really intense, guys. This was like super intense. It was beyond colors being enhanced. Like, things were moving and morphing, like things, it was like, I can't even begin to explain it. Like, just very visually intense this trip was. And I'd only dropped 2 tabs, so I was just like, okay, what the fuck is going on? And at this point, I'm tweaking out. Like, I was not ready for this. I'm having a bad trip at this point. I'm really uncomfortable. Not at all what I expected it to be. And that's why I think it was 25i, because had it been acid, I think I would have had a great trip. I've done acid plenty of times. I know what to expect, and that was not my like any of my experiences with acid. So, I asked my buddy Chris. I'm like, yo, dude, I'm not feeling good. I just need to go outside right now. I figured maybe some fresh air would help me. So he's like, all right, bro, go ahead. So I go outside. I've got a cigarette. I'm smoking a square, just walking up and down the block, just completely incoherent at this point, really out of it, barely even know where I am. The street looks really long. The trees are really tall. Everything's just scary. It's dark out. It's scary as fuck. This was no other psychedelic experience I'd ever had. And, I'm walking up and down the street. This guy, oh, I remember this so well because I remember my buddy Chad pointed it out after we walked by him. This guy was in his driveway, and I walked by just dripping sweat. And it was cold as fuck, too. It was 30-something degrees, and I was just dripping sweat. And I walked by, and this guy's like, hey, how you, or no, he's like, hi, he didn't say, how are you? He said something along the lines of hello, but it was more than a hello. It was like a long hello. And I didn't say hi back. I remember I said, good, how are you? And I kept walking. And Chad just starts losing his shit laughing. And I look over and I'm just like, what? What's so funny? I don't get it. And he tells me what I just said. He's like, dude, that guy didn't ask you how you were doing. And I was like, oh, fuck. And he just starts laughing. He's like, that's some real acid shit right there. And I was like, yeah, that was some dumb shit. So I'm walking out there for maybe 15, 20 minutes. Go back into Chris's house, and I'm still just feeling really uncomfortable. My heart's racing. I don't feel good. Not necessarily nauseous, sick, but just my heart, just mentally, I'm just completely uncomfortable and out of it, and there was no escape. So finally, I was incoherent. I was sweating so hard and I was so hot, no matter how many layers of clothes I took off, that finally I just got a cold glass of water and just stuck my hand in it. Just a glass of ice water, and just shoved my hand in it, and I was sitting on the couch, barely able to form a sentence. I tried to close my eyes and go to sleep. It didn't work, of course. Dumbass me. I'm on psychedelics. You can't sleep on any hallucinogens. But finally, my buddy Chad is just kind of like, well, what should we do here? You're not having a good time. What should we do? And I was like, I don't know, man. I think you should just take me home. So he was like, all right, cool. So he was mid-rolling a blunt, and I was like, dude, I don't want to wait. I was kind of a dick about it, but I was like, bro, I don't want to wait for you to roll that. Can you just roll that after you drop me off? And he was like, yeah. So, he slipped the bud back in the bag. He slipped the paper back in the package, and we hopped in his car. I shook up with Chris. I was like, all right, peace out, bro. Just completely incoherent. I don't think I said it like that. Probably said some mumbo jumbo. And get back in Chad's car, and we start driving back to my house. We're about 20 minutes away, and we're just riding down the street. And at this point, I'm feeling a little better. I'm feeling pretty good now. We got the windows down. We're bumping some music, and I'm feeling good. But at the same time, I knew I had to be home pretty soon. I kind of had a curfew, and I would have violated it, but at the same time, I wanted to go home as well, because I figured maybe if I just laid down, played some video games, and smoked a little weed, I would feel better. Just faced a couple bulls, maybe played some Battlefield or something. I figured that would make me feel better. It didn't. I'll get to that. But anyways, Chad's driving me home at this point, and I get back home. And he drops me off, and my neighbor is having this huge Halloween party, and it was a bunch of college kids, clearly, because my neighbor, when I was staying with my dad, because I was at my dad's house at the time this happened, she was a really old, serious woman. So I'd also known that she had a son, not because I met him, but because I just seen him go in and out of the house, and my dad had mentioned it to me. So I was like, okay, her son's throwing a fucking banger right now. It was popping. There was so many people. I heard a lot of loud laughter and yelling. I could smell some weed smoke. There were kids smoking squares on the porch. There was clearly beers all over the table. The blinds were open on the front. It was popping. And Chad looks over at me and he's like, dude, your neighbor's having a Halloween party. He's like, we should go hit that, dude. Let's just slide. And I was like, I don't know if we can do that, not only because of the condition I'm in currently, but, I'm not the kind of guy to just waltz into someone's party who I've never met completely uninvited. Like, that's not my style. I don't know. I need to make sure, like, I'm welcome there before I go in. So, Chad's like, all right, bro, well, hit me up. Hope you have a good night. Peace out. I shake up with him, go back in my house, walk in. My dad's just sitting on the couch. My eyes are just fucking watermelons. Like, my pupils are just straight footballs. And, he looks at me and apparently doesn't notice at first. I don't know. And I just walk up the stairs. I'm just like, hi. And he's just like, hey. I just run up my stairs, go to my room, and shut the door immediately. Still got my eighth in my pocket. We smoked a little bit, so I had maybe like 2.5, 3 grams left. I think we each matched maybe a 10 sack. And we'd smoked a little bit. I had my bud, I had a couple blunt wraps, and I had my bowl. And, I was just like, all right, I just need some weed. This is going to settle me down. So I hop in my bed, get comfy, throw on some sweatpants and a t-shirt, and I start packing up bowls, just bowl after bowl. And I'm hitting all of them, and it's not even making a difference. Like, I'm not even feeling it. Like, it didn't affect me at all. So I was like, okay, this is a problem. At this point, I'd blown through maybe 1.5 grams. I was just packing bowl after bowl. And I was like, well, I know. I just need a blunt. So, I go get my Swishers, my favorite flavor, the Swisher Diamonds. And I got a blunt, roll it up, throw a dub in there, and I light it. Just sitting in my room smoking. My dad's downstairs. Now, my dad is really oblivious. The whole house would smell like weed, but if he came up and asked me if I was smoking in my room, I could literally just say no, and he'd just be like, okay, and go back downstairs. Like, he would never pursue it any further. So, I ended up facing a blunt in my room, had my window open, listening to the kids next door partying, going ham. And my trip got really, really weird and, like, intense after this. Like, I don't know what caused it to skyrocket. Maybe it was the weed, but it was just insane what happened after this. So when I finish smoking, my dad goes to bed at this point, and I go downstairs and make myself some food. We had like some leftover chili or something, and I just microwaved it, threw a little cheese on there, went up to my room, was like, maybe I just need to eat and chill out, watch some YouTube videos. Still feeling this incredible discomfort, like this just what the fuck kind of feeling. Still sweating balls. I was wearing a t-shirt and a sweatshirt, and I was soaked as if I'd just gotten out of the bath in those clothes. Like, that's how fucking hard I was sweating. So, I end up eating the chili and doing all that. My dad's asleep at this point, and I don't know what drove me to do this. I hadn't spoken to my mom in about 4 months at this point, maybe a little longer than that. But for some reason, I just decided to call my mom. I was just like, I'm tripping balls right now, and it would just make total sense to call my mom. So I call her, and I just make no sense. Like, I remember fragments of the conversation. I remember just asking her, like, how she's doing and just like random shit. And she knew immediately that I was fucked up. She was like, Nick, what did you take? Like, what did you do? And I was like, I don't know. And originally I was like dodging the question, beating around it. And finally, if I was sober, I wouldn't have told her. But, of course I was tripping balls. She was like, what did you do? Like, you need to tell me, Nick. You don't sound okay. And she's like, what did you do? Cause like, I just sounded so fucked up. And I was like, acid. And like, I started laughing. I remember that very clearly. And she was like, okay, hold on. I'm going to call someone. I thought that meant she was going to call my dad. Stupid sober me looking back on it. I should have known I was about to get fucked. So, I'm sitting there in my room, just chilling. At this point, I've smoked basically all my weed. I have maybe like a 10 sack left. And I pack up another bowl, smoke it. And within 10 minutes, the whole party next door shuts down and there's sirens outside. I didn't quite compute that they were there for me. I was like, damn, party got busted, man. That must suck. And then all of a sudden, my doorbell rings, and there's knocking on the door. And it wakes my dad up, and he goes downstairs and answers the door. There's paramedics, a fire truck, and a cop car. And then my mom is standing there. And I'm just tripping sack on whatever psychedelic this was. I don't even know. I'm just like, oh fuck. Like, I was like, is this real right now? Like, is this happening or not? I don't know. So, I'm standing there. I'm like on the staircase, kind of looking at the door, and the EMTs are the first one to walk in from the ambulance, and then it's the cops, and then the firemen are just kind of standing around. And I run back up to my room. I still have my weed on my nightstand, but like there's so much evidence of drugs in my room. I'm just trying to hide everything that I can because I'm like, oh, I'm about to get so popped. There's just like bongs and bowls sitting on the shelf. There's, just weed on my nightstand. There's empty blunt wraps everywhere. Like, it's just fucked. So I'm just stuffing stuff in drawers and under beds and like just random shit. And finally, I hear the cops are coming up the stairs and they open my bedroom door and they're like, "Hey, are you Nick?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And at this point, I'm just sitting on my bed trying to act all cool because I heard him come up. So I was like, "All right, just pretend I was laying in bed." And my bud, the 10 sack I had left, was still sitting on my nightstand. The cops were really cool about it, actually. They didn't charge me with anything. They didn't take anything. All they did was they just asked me, "All right, buddy, your mom called us and said you were pretty messed up. What did you do?" And I didn't want to snitch on myself because I didn't want to catch a charge or anything since I was already on probation. So I was just like, "Oh, I just smoked a little too much weed." And the cop looks at me and he's like, I remember this really clearly. He was like, "All right, where's the weed, man? Just show us." So I don't know why I did this. I don't know like what drove me to do this. I wasn't even intending to fuck with him, but I didn't want to give up my weed, excuse me, even though he was very like he looked at it. I saw him look at the weed. And I had this little Take 5 bar on my nightstand. And I hand him the Take 5 bar. Like, it's wrapped. It's not open. And he looks at it, and he just looks dumbfounded. And he looks at me, and he's just like, the weed's in the Take 5 bar. He's like, "Is it an edible?" And I'm just like, "Yup." I'm just like, "Yup, that's it. That's the weed." I don't know why the fuck I did that. Like, looking back, I'm actually embarrassed as shit about that because I just made a complete ass of myself in front of the entire, like, local police force. So, the cop's like, "All right, are you cool with coming with me? Like, am I not going to have to handcuff you or anything?" And I was like, yeah, I'm cool with it." I didn't know where I was going at this point. And as I'm walking down the stairs, he's just like, "All right, just follow me downstairs." So I'm walking downstairs. There's another cop that follows behind me, and then I'm following the dude in front of me. And the dude behind me is just laughing. Like, he doesn't even say anything. The cop behind me, young dude, looks like he's maybe mid-20s, is just laughing his ass off. And at the time, I was like, what's so funny? Looking back on it, if I was a cop, that would have, like, this event would have made my day. Like, this would have been something I would have remembered for years to come. Just this fucked up kid, tripping sack, just completely shit-faced, handing me a Take 5 bar saying it was weed. Like, oh, man. But anyway, so walk downstairs, the EMTs are there, and they're like, "You ready to take a ride with us?" And I was like, "Where am I going?" And then the cop's like, "We're just going to take you to the hospital, make sure you're okay, check up, stuff like that." So I'm like, "All right, let's hit it." At this point, I was like, if I say no, they're just going to force me. Like, I don't really have a choice here. So I was like, "All right, whatever, let's get it." So I get in the ambulance, I walk out, and at this point, I'm still tripping balls, not really, like, understanding or processing mentally what's happening. Just like visually I see what's happening, but like my brain isn't necessarily wrapped around it because at this point I didn't even think this was real. Like, I was like, "Oh, I'm just tripping really fucking hard right now. Like, maybe that was some DMT, who knows?" But I didn't really wrap my mind around the fact that it was real. So at this point, I'm maybe like 4 hours into my trip, and I get in the back of the ambulance and I'm just riding in the back. The EMT's taking my vitals, and I remember the EMT, he had a dope-ass mustache. Like, this guy had the thickest, most fullest mustache I've ever seen. So I was like, I remember I looked at him, and for some reason I was just like, "Damn, dude, you got a nice mustache." And he just starts laughing. And for some reason I just asked him, I saw he had a wedding ring on. I was like, "Your wife tell you that very often?" And he was like, "No, she doesn't." And I was like, "Oh, dude, she needs to tell you that." And the EMTs are just losing their shit laughing. And I'm just like, "Oh, I'm the fucking man in this ambulance." And after this, they start taking my vitals and they hooked me up. I don't know exactly what they were doing to me because I was tripping so hard that like I wasn't focused on what they were doing to me. I was more focused on the flashing lights around me and like the interior, the ambulance, and the people than like what they were putting in my arm, because they ran me full of fluids and like some sort of stuff. I never really found out, but I knew they had me hooked up to fluids and all that, especially when I got to the hospital. I don't know if it was just water to like cool me down and like get me hydrated or what, but it was something. So anyways, this is when the trip gets really weird. So I'm sitting here, I'm in the back of the ambulance, and we start riding along, and at this point I start hearing things that aren't there. I was in an acid or whatever it was induced psychosis at this point. At least that's the conclusion I drew. I was never like diagnosed like, "Yeah, you were in a psychosis," but it makes total sense. I was definitely in a psychosis at this point. I remember just hearing music that wasn't there, just songs like mashed together. Like, I remember hearing like some Lil Uzi songs I was listening to earlier when they weren't really playing. I was hearing like all sorts of different kinds of rap music and music that I liked just meshed together. Like never a full song, never more than like 10 seconds of a song. It was like a big mix, like a big DJ house mix, you know, and it was really, really weird. Like I can't explain it, but it wasn't weird at the time for me. Like because I thought it was real, and all of a sudden I just like, I started having these, it's so weird. I can't even describe it to you guys. Like this is the most intense drug experience I've ever had. It was not in a good way. It was terrifying, but I started like, I genuinely believed I was dying at this point. I was like in the ambulance. My heart rate was through the roof. And for some reason, I just started like, there wasn't necessarily like thoughts in my head, like specific thoughts, but just this negativity, like this darkness just like consumed my mind. And like, I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Like I'm dying right now. And like, I was just sitting there thinking of like dying and death and like dying slowly and painfully and like being tortured and all this stuff. And like, it was all in my head. I wasn't seeing any of this. The visuals were still just really out of whack. Everything was just moving and wiggling, and it was weird. But I remember just genuinely thinking like, I'm going to die a very painful death today. And like, it was terrifying. It was so scary. And I remember thinking like every time he kept like, he was sticking needles in my arm or something. I don't know what he was taking. Like, I don't know what he was doing to me, but like he was putting the fluid in my arm, and I thought that like, I felt a little pinch, and I was like, oh, this is what's going to kill me. Like, I'm going to die right here. He's going to pop like an artery or something. I'm so dead. And like, I started getting really scared and like paranoid. And, you know, I was sitting in the ambulance, and like, I thought I was hearing voices at this point. They weren't making much sense, but like, on top of the thinking I was going to die, I just heard like these voices. And I thought like, at the time I thought it was like God talking to me. And I was like, oh dude, I'm totally going to heaven right now. Like this is why, like this is God telling me, what up bro? Welcome to heaven. And like, I was like, wow, I'm really about to die. I'm only 17. I'm too young. And like, I remember thinking just what the fuck? Like I was just so scared and so like confused at this point. It was so weird. And you know, I'm sitting there in the back of this ambulance, just completely incoherent and terrified. Like, by far the worst drug experience I've ever had. Just mortified. And they wheel me out of the ambulance. We get to the hospital, but maybe like 10 minutes later. They were pretty fast. I don't really know how much time it took because I didn't really have a concept of time at this point. And I get wheeled into the hospital, and I'm like put in this room. You know, it's like a normal hospital room. And, you know, at first I'm just alone in there. They leave me alone with the lights on, strapped to the bed, like completely strapped to the bed. I'm talking like they had me like, you know, the little Velcro things that can go over the hospital beds. They had them. So I was like strapped down. They had all the stuff on my chest for taking my vitals. They had me hooked up to fluids still. And like, I felt so trapped. And let me tell you guys, one of the worst things when you're having a bad trip is to feel trapped. So I had maybe like 6 or so hours left of this trip, just strapped into this hospital bed, not able to sleep, guys. And it was horrifying. Like, it was just inexplicable. Like, I can't even begin to put into words how, I don't want to say traumatizing, but like at the same time I do, just like traumatizing this experience was. Like, it was horrible. And like, I don't know, I'm not going to get into it too far because this video is getting super long already. So I'm just going to end it here. Expect part 2 tomorrow. Hope you guys enjoy. Drop a like if you did, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.